One of the best compliments that I've ever have had in my life was somebody posted a video of us playing that on Facebook, and Howard Leese, who played that originally on the record, he commented, "Hey, nice job on the synth solo," and I was just like, so we kind of are in a little bit of a gray area where uh, we have to consider it a tribute because we don't have the main faces in the band that people think of when they think of Heart. That's Ann and Nancy, and we'll never have that. So we can't go out there saying that we are Heart because we're just not. But we have some good credibility, as with two of the original guys.
Hey everybody, welcome to another podcast session. Today's guest is somebody amazing. She plays in a Heart tribute. We're not going to exactly call it a tribute. We might call it an untribute because this band has two of the original members from Heart. Her name is Lizzy Daymont. She is an incredible musician, also a singer, studied at Berkeley, plays a bunch of instruments in the band, and she's got some great stories, great advice too. And I can't wait for everybody to listen, watch. You know what to do. Anyway, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. It really means a lot to us. Like this video, helps the channel out. And any comments you have, I'll try and answer as many as we can. And let's get right into this interview with Lizzy. Lizzy, where are you? Let's go. Lizzy Daymont. I don't even know how many instruments you play, probably 5 zillion, but we're going to get into that. But she plays in the tribute band called Heart by Heart. And it's an incredible band. I've seen them online. And I just can't wait to ask you a million questions. We're going to start with right from the beginning. So your background in music, from what I understand, you have family roots in music. You went to Berkeley. You play all kinds of instruments. So give us the 2-second overview of your life in music prior to Heart by Heart. I know it's long. We're going to get into a bunch of things, but give us a little bit.
I started out mostly just playing in original bands. I never thought about playing covers or tributes or anything like that. I just wanted to be in a good band and write music and tour and make records. And, that didn't really ever pan out as far as, doing it full time. I always had a day job. So I went through 90s and the 2000s just doing that. Just getting it, just playing in different bands. I played bass mostly. I played guitar and keyboards just on my own at home, just for fun and trying to write stuff, record my own stuff. But, gigging wise, I just played bass in different bands, either as a member or as a hired gun, with singer-songwriters and like in the early 2000s, I played with Susan Robkin, just trying to get out there, for her to do her music. And I was just a support member there.
And plus you're getting the experience of being out there and playing and getting your name out there too,
Yeah. We did a lot of shows and I got a lot of good experience. And then I went on to another couple bands. And then finally it was like somebody offered me a gig playing in a cover band. I'm like, well, okay. I get paid. Okay.
You're like, what is this,
nice.
Money?
Yeah, so, I didn't think about doing covers until then. And then it was like, oh, this is actually, enjoyable, even if it wasn't music I necessarily liked, like pop, dancey music. I dug it. It was, and my husband is a drummer, and he was the drummer in that band. And so I'm like, yeah, that'd be fun. We had already played in a bunch of other bands together, but this was kind of a whole new thing. It's like, hey, let's just get hired to play whatever and get out there and gig. so yeah, that's kind of what set me on to playing cover band stuff. And I did a few different bands.
And like you said, you were getting paid for it, which is such a, I've been through it too. Playing the original music, you're at it for so long, Sometimes you can make some money, but I mean, super successful people make money. But I'm talking about when you're
Right.
out there just grinding and doing it and you're not really pulling in the money, you're like, all right, well, I got to pay my bills somehow. How am I going to make
It
some
got old.
money?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And there's so many different ways. Running your own studio is another outlet, how you can make money, writing your own original music, whether it's for sync, for TV and film and stuff like that. There's all kinds of outlets that you can do.
Yeah.
But the tribute scene has just blown up where it's just become a thing and a lot of people are making a lot of money. But early on in your career, I know that, you went to Berkeley, you studied at Berkeley, or did you do online Berkeley? Or tell us a little bit about that, because I love talking to people, of course, when they have the education of music.
Yeah. Well, it was kind of, I went there old school, it's like I graduated high school and it's like I knew I wanted to play music. I knew when I was 12 that I wanted to play music. I was a bit naive about it, thinking, oh, I just want to be famous and like do this thing that I love. I wasn't thinking about the logistics of having a career at the time. I mean, this is late 80s when I graduated high school, and there wasn't the internet. There wasn't all this information out there to learn about how to go about doing it. But yeah, I got into Berkeley and I went off to Boston and went to school. I went there for 2 years, and then I kind of ran out of money, honestly. And I was like, well, okay, I'm just going to work. And I just worked in a record store and, played in bands
I love
at
that.
that point. Yeah, because that's like, well, that's what you do. Then I realized, oh, this is a lot, like to get out there and be successful. It's a lot of work. So, eventually I met up with some guys that I played with. We never made it out of the basement, but those were the guys with whom I moved out to Seattle. They're like, let's go to Seattle and see what's out there. And this was just after the grunge thing had happened, so that was over at that point. But
Right.
we're like, I think we were playing this weird psychedelic improv music, and thought Seattle would be a good place for that. And then the whole thing kind of fell apart after we got here. But
Talking about Berkeley, like, did you concentrate on one instrument? Because obviously, in
yeah,
any music school, you kind of get a general education of reading and playing in different kind of, whether it's an orchestra or a big band or anything like that. Was there any one instrument that, you had mentioned bass earlier, but was there any one instrument that you said, I'm going to concentrate studying on this? And,
oh, bass.
bass. So bass
Yeah,
was your main
absolutely.
instrument. And did you play not only electric bass, but did you study upright bass as well?
No, just electric. In fact,
Okay.
behind me is my
I
hero,
see.
Geddy Lee.
Listen,
Um,
you're preaching to. I love Neil, so
yeah, so he, yeah, he was one of my hugest inspirations to want to play bass. And that was my main instrument. So I got into Berkeley as a bass player. That was my focal instrument. And yeah, it was incredibly useful to learn about all of the theory and harmony and learning how to, put music together and all of the little mechanics of constructing music. Plus, ear training and, getting good at identifying intervals and all that.
yeah, I totally get it because myself, I didn't go to Berkeley or I studied like business of music and stuff in college and stuff. But at an early age, my parents were like, piano, you're going to learn piano,
Yes.
and they forced it me for like many years of training, going to a music school to learn piano. So for me, it was a great background on theory, learning how to read music and all that until my dad decided to bring home a drum and said, what's this kid going to do with a drum? Let me give it to him. And then before you know it, I was just like, yeah, I'm a drummer. That's it. I don't even
And
work
they,
the piano
then they said,
anymore.
no, stop,
Yeah,
stop.
no, it was more the neighbors said no stuff. My
Yeah.
parents were actually kind of cool, but yeah, they were just like, they didn't think like any kid, it's going to last for a month, X amount of years later, I'm still drumming. But it has helped me so much having that musical knowledge of knowing when you sit in a room with musicians, you can go, oh, I'd rather hear this chord or that chord or this time signature or that. It's such an help, like having that background. So I get where you're coming from. But, what about like, so you're playing Heart music now, but prior to that, and we would see the man and back you. What were some of your musical influences? From aside from Getty or Rush or anything like that.
Yeah, prog rock in general, yes, and Rush and ELP, Genesis, all of those bands, 70s bands were really that spoke to me. It wasn't just dumb pop music, which some of that I liked too, but yeah, I felt like it was more challenging, more kind of intellectually stimulating, the lyrics and
Yeah, I mean, and back then they had amazing those bands. Not like even bands like King Crimson. You're just like
yeah,
those guys blow you away. What they're
it just
playing and
makes you
stuff like
think
that.
about stuff.
Absolutely. Even like I was just doing some research, and I'm a fan of them too, but looking at Genesis and stuff like that. And then as I was revisiting some of their music, I was like, oh my God, the keyboard player, just the stuff he's playing is crazy. It's like mind blowing, even though I know that from years of listening to them. But when you go and sit down and re-study that stuff, not just as a listener, but you're trying to study what they do for me, it was for future interviews and stuff like that. I was just like, man, it just reintroduced me to how amazing their music is and how complicated it is. You don't even realize it. The same with bands that you said, yeah, Rush and Yes and all those bands. So yeah, that's definitely rounds you as far as, what you bring to the table for any kind of situation you would step into. We're going to get into the whole like talking about heart by heart, but from a personal life standpoint, how do you balance doing heart by heart? Now you have a studio, right? That you and your husband run, like a project studio. I think I was reading about it.
Yeah, it's not open to anyone else but us. We sometimes we have band rehearsals here, and it's a place for him to play drums. He's got a soundproof room for playing drums, and not bothering the neighbors, like you understand.
No, yeah, yeah, yeah. And so, how do you balance all of that? Like, if you get called for session work, the live gigs, you mentioned maybe online that you also teach as well, music. And I don't know whether you still teach or it was
Not
something.
really.
Not really.
It's
Okay.
some, I mean, I occasionally get asked, but sometimes I'm just not available, so I don't. It's not something I typically do very much of.
So, is it heart by heart? Is that the main thing right now that's keeping
Yeah.
you busy? Okay, well, let's jump into that for a little bit. So, heart by heart, talk about how did you find the band? How did you audition for them? What was that like?
I had heard about them around Seattle. They started actually. They just had their 14th anniversary of when the band actually started.
Incredible. Yeah.
Yeah, and I had heard about them because I'm a big Heart fan. Nancy Wilson, another big influence. That so musically, I loved all their stuff. I was kind of a obsessed fan for a few years like in my late teenage years. So I knew all their music, and I was excited to get to see them. One of my bands got to open up for them at a show, and so I was all excited because I got to meet them. And
And Steve and Michael are the main guys in the
yeah,
band,
so
right?
Steve Fossen is the original bass player from Heart, and Mike DeRozier, the original drummer. Which is obviously, being a fan, it's like I really wanted to see those guys play together after, they hadn't been in the band since 1982. Um, so I got to watch them and see their whole show, and it was just incredible to see them all doing all those songs. And and then I met them, and that was it. And right after that, they got inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, which was exciting, of course, because
Of
they deserved
course.
it.
Yeah.
And then maybe a month later, I got a phone call from an agent, booking agent that I worked with another band who knew them. And he told me that they were looking for a female singer, maybe who could play guitar to add to their lineup. And do you have Stephanie's number? he wanted he wanted to get somebody else's info that I worked with
Oh,
uh,
wow.
to see if
That's a
she was
wild
interested
call.
in playing. Yeah, and I'm like, sure, I'll ask her, and I hooked them up, and I said, by the way, if she doesn't work out, tell him that I'm interested. And he's like, oh, I thought you just played bass. So, you know, one thing led to another, and they did call me. And I said, yeah, I play guitar a little bit, and I have to practice a bit, but I was like just
From
so
what I
into the
see, you play a
idea.
lot of guitar. You know.
Well, now I do now.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I had to work. I had to get my chops up and,
Sure.
get all those Nancy Wilson acoustic things down
Yeah,
and,
it's not easy.
which
That
was,
that the guitar works amazing, first of all, and it's not
oh,
easy.
thanks.
It's not like you just throw it on and
Right.
play. You have to study
I
that
had to
stuff.
work. I had to
Yeah.
do a lot of work to get ready for that. And yeah. So yeah, then I went and auditioned. They had me learn a couple songs, and I'm all nervous and but I did my three songs that they asked me to do, and this was just a regular rehearsal for them that I came to. And when we did that, they're like, "Okay, great. You want to just stick around and like maybe play a little bit more? We'll just run our set." And I played the entire set with them because I already knew all the songs.
Oh, that's amazing. And are they, just to backtrack for a second? Are they from the same town that
Yeah,
you were in? Okay.
yeah, they're in Seattle.
Okay.
Steve is a native, all everybody in Hart they started in Seattle. Actually, they were in Vancouver, BC for a little while in the very beginning, and then they came back down to Seattle.
So you go and you play down the entire set with them, which is exciting. You thought you were there for three songs, and then you ended up playing a whole set. Now,
Yeah.
here's a question for you. Did they have you audition, obviously, like on guitar, because that was something they were interested, but did they say, hey, you play some other instruments. Can you play this? Can you sing harmonies? What other stuff did they ask you to do that day, or did they not?
Well, the what they wanted was mostly someone who could sing Nancy's harmonies,
Sure.
preferably a female, so the sound would be right. She'd have
Yeah,
the
yeah, of
range.
course. Yeah.
And then it was like, hey, if you can play some acoustic guitar, that'd be great too. So I think that's mostly what they wanted was acoustic guitar and backup harmonies to fill out the Nancy Wilson parts because they didn't have, somebody that could do that in their lineup at the time. They had two guitar players, and one of those guys played keyboards, but they couldn't handle the vocals. So that's mainly what they wanted. And then, the guitar was just kind of a bonus, And also they asked me how I was on electric guitar, if I could do some of the leads, because sometimes one of the guys, they had Randy Hansen as one of the guitar players who was famous for his Jimi Hendrix
Yes, yes, of
tribute,
course.
and he's amazing. But he also was always touring on his own. So he would be not available for several weeks out of the year. And they're like, well, maybe we could get somebody that could just play his parts or fill in, when he's not there. So they asked me about that possibility. I'm like, well, I'm no Eddie Van Halen, but I can do some things, if
Right,
it's
right.
not too shreddy. But so yeah, they're like, well, okay. And then, as the years went by, I was able to do, when one of the guitar players left, I took over all his parts. So I was doing a lot more electric. And then when the keyboard player left, uh, I said, well, I could probably do that stuff.
Oh my God. So it's been since 2013 since you've been in a band and up until now. So your part and involvement in the band has totally evolved, from the first audition day to where it is today, you know.
Yeah. I never
That's
didn't see that happening, but
no,
yeah.
but you know what? No, let me ask you this. Do you find that enjoyable, being able to switch up instruments? Is that a passion of yours that you're like, man, I really enjoy switching it up a little bit? Because I know obviously bass is the number one. And then, but now that you're doing a bunch of things from,
Mhm.
I would think it keeps you entertained or, and not, it doesn't get boring.
Yeah. You hit the nail on the head right there. It's like it is keeps me on my toes, and I enjoy the work of it, the being a jack of all trades kind of thing. What's fun for me is doing all the keyboard programming, and because I'm a little bit of a nerd when it comes to that
I
stuff
love
with
that.
synths and yeah, and like
So you
trying to
dig
get the
right into,
sounds just right.
yeah, and with today's technology, it's, you still have to program. I don't care what you say, but you can pretty much duplicate what was happening on the records,
Oh yeah, it's so much easier to do that now with virtual synths is what I'm using. Everything is memorable.
It's crazy. It's funny because being in a tribute band, fans come to watch you and they want to hear it like it is on the record, you know? And to be able to close your eyes and just go, they sound just like Heart is amazing. We had another guest on the show. They're called the Australian Pink Floyd tribute band, huge Pink
Hmm.
Floyd band, probably
Yeah.
one of the biggest. Anyway, the two people that started the band were part of the interview. And we got into some of the techie stuff because Pink Floyd, you know, you're going back from the day. And I was talking to them. I said, what is for you like hardest stuff to replicate live? And they said, well, let me tell you, you know, you can't be too perfect because then it doesn't sound like the record. And I was like, well, exactly what do you mean by that? And they were talking about when they recorded those records, you don't even think about this. Maybe you and I might, but maybe the fans don't. But the stuff was out of tune, you know?
Yeah.
And so it sounds a certain way. So if you play it in tune, it might not sound so realistic. So they literally will have some of the songs out of tune on the guitars and play it like that. And they said that it definitely, they've had people come up to them and said, you know, when they first started, they didn't. It was everything was in tune perfectly with the tuners, with the effects, everything they were using. And then they were like, you know, they had some people critique them and say, just doesn't sound like the record. And they couldn't figure out why. Then they went to one of the actual guitar techs that worked with David Gilmour on those records and told them the reason what you're doing wrong is that you're making it too perfect. You know, back then on the records, if you listen to, I don't know if it's Dark Side of the Moon, don't quote me on this, everybody, but some of the stuff is out of tune. And when you play it live, if it's too perfect, it doesn't quite sound. And I'm like, man, you have to really be attentive listening to that stuff. But that's what they said. So to me, that's mind
Wow.
blowing. The same with Heart. You know, I don't. You know, I haven't gone back and really tested those records to see if everything's in tune. But and you would probably know better than me. But you know, just talking about how you have to get the exact sounds for, you know, the keyboard sounds. I think maybe Magic Man maybe is one of the songs where it's definitely, that's a heavy synth, you know, I don't know. I forget what part I was going to say to bridge, but I don't know. But in my head, just saying that, I hear that keyboard part in my head and I hear that sound. Now, for you programming it, it takes time to do that. And a lot of people don't know that, you know? So props to you for doing all that and you know and accomplishing
Well,
that because it takes time.
I got to tell you, one of the best compliments that I've ever have had in my life was somebody posted a video of us playing that on Facebook, and Howard Leese, who is who played that originally on the
Yes,
record, he commented, "Hey, nice job on the synth solo," and I was just like,
you gotta love that.
"Thank you, wow!" The guy who did it. And and he didn't when they played that live, he didn't do that exact thing. He did some other little flourishes, and they did it a little differently. But I prefer to stick to the record because that's what people listen to over and over again.
Yeah, absolutely. Because you could go down a rabbit hole of all the live albums and live
Right.
tracks, and it's just all over the place. Extended version. That's. I mean, I was going to ask: is there one person that comes up with the set list, or over the years, I'm sure you change. You know, the different eras that you play from, pull from different. You need those staple songs. Don't get me wrong,
Yes.
but there might be some B-sides or something that maybe you guys want to throw in just because, or maybe fans request it. So who is in charge of all of that?
It's we collectively get it figured out. It's funny. I go back and look at what they used to do. They used to do a lot more songs in a whole set. But now it's kind of like we've stretched it out a little bit where there's a little more chit chat between songs and, storytelling from Steve, about some stuff. And um, we certain songs have stuck in the set just because we enjoy playing them, even if they're kind of like an album track, like Mistral Wind, for instance. We have to always do that because it's an epic song, and Mike DeRozier's drumming on it is just really good, and we all loved playing that. It's probably my favorite song to play, um, just because when I first became a Heart fan. That song was like so cool. But we together come up with what songs we want to do. I personally kind of try to do the order, and I'll present it to everybody and say, like, I think this works. What do you guys think? And like, they're like, sure, that'll work.
And how often does that change? Does the order change a lot?
A few times a year. It kind of depends what we're doing. Every once in a while we're like, let's get rid of that song, or like let's bring this one back. Because there's so many. We can't do all of the great heart
The
songs.
catalogs is crazy, you know?
Mike and Steve were only on five of the original Heart albums back in the day. So there's tons of hit songs to pull from those. But we also do some of the 80s songs that they didn't originally play on. But the audience loves to hear those. And that's, when they think of Heart, they think of Alone, These Dreams. And we like to do those, even though Mike and Steve didn't play on them. But people love hearing them.
It's
So,
just in the catalog, it's a staple, you know? And
yeah.
Heart tribute band is, people are coming to see not everybody, but they want the hits, that they recognize. You kind of always have to do them. Sometimes, you switch up an order, or maybe a band might switch up an arrangement to keep your own self satisfied for when you're playing that out. But I was curious for the opening song. Is there one opening song that you always do and one closer song that you guys do?
We've changed the opener from time to time. For a long time, we would start with Cook with Fire.
Okay.
That's the first track you hear on Dog and Butterfly. So you put that record on, and it's a live recording, so it's really exciting. It's a great opener. And then we get tired of it and switch. We right now I think Magic Man is our opener.
Wow, that's a cool
We've
song
opened
too.
with Baby Lestrange, but it's important to start out with a bang.
It is, because
So
you're not going to start out with just a ballad and go, everybody's like, yeah,
yeah,
you need that,
yeah,
like, you need that kick in the ass song. What about a
yeah,
closer? Like, do you do like the end song and then do an encore?
yeah. We're kind of doing the whole, like we'll finish with the big one, which is Barracuda, and then that's kind of like the end of the show, and then we'll do an encore. We'll walk off stage and then come back and do an
Sure.
encore. Sometimes that gets a little tedious if depending on the crowd. Some gigs that we do, they're like maybe some kind of outdoor city sponsored concert where they want to get out of there. They might just leave. So it's like, well, they're not going to get an encore if they all start leaving.
Of course, yeah.
So it depends on the show.
How dare
Sometimes
you
we
leave
won't.
during our set?
Exactly. So it's like, well, should we go back out and do one? It doesn't seem like they're not clapping enough, but uh, so we're thinking about getting away from doing that typical leave the stage and then come back. We'll just stay out there and play that extra song.
And it's funny because I just read something online. It might have been like a Billboard or something like that. The trend, even for the national touring bands, or they're not doing that anymore, where they leave and come back. They're like, yeah, no,
It's
we're just going to play
it's
you
a
the
little
last song. See you
it's
later.
a little
Goodbye.
phony. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like the line in the article. I think it was a great line. I think it. Oh yeah, we don't want to do the adult hide and seek anymore. I thought that was great. Because it's the
It's
truth.
good.
They're peeking
Yeah.
behind a curtain. Everybody into it. No, they're just playing the last
Yeah.
song and out.
It's
And
just got a little
plus,
cliche.
yeah, and plus, I think you guys, something I wanted to ask you, get to do a meet and greet with fans. And when does that happen? After the show, before the show, both?
After the show, yeah, we'll usually go out to the lobby if depending on what kind of venue it is. But yeah, we're available to meet.
That's awesome.
If
And I'm sure the fans
there's
appreciate
merch,
that.
yeah, they do, and we don't charge money either. We don't. There's no like VIP ticket where you get to meet the band. It's like no, we'll meet anyone who wants to come up and say hi. The guys will sign any kind of hard albums or memorabilia that they have. And then we have our own merch as well that we sign. And, we love talking to people.
Yeah, I mean, your fans are there. They're appreciating what you do. You want to kind of give it back to them, which is, whenever if I see even the national bands too, but the national bands are really about the money, and they have to make that money, so they charge you extra VIP, meet and greet. Which sometimes you look at the prices, you're like, holy crap, who's buying that? But they do, and I get it. Everybody has a different business model, so I'm not dissing it in any way. It's just, every band has their way of doing so. So I appreciate what you guys do for your fans, which is really, really cool. Has being in the band Heart to Heart, like, through the years, like, is there like one or multiple things, rewarding experiences that were brought to the table, either from, being in this particular band or from a particular show? And by that, it could be anything. It could be even meeting, I don't know if there's other members of Heart you happen to have met or anything
Yeah.
like that,
Well, yeah, actually that would be one. I've gotten to meet Ann Wilson a few times when she's been touring with her own solo band
Yeah, I saw that.
in
Yep.
recent years. Yeah, and Steve is in touch with her management, and they're not really like in touch with each other, but there's still business with Heart that they deal with. But yeah, he would talk to them, and she would put us on their guest list. And I was invited too. So we've gotten to hang out and just say hello to her, and she's been so cool. She was
And
just
she's cool, right?
she's totally cool. And the guys in her band that are now in Heart, it's the current touring lineup of Heart. Those guys are great and very respectful of Mike and Steve, and they're like, oh, just really happy to meet them. And and so it's been that's a little perk that I've gotten to get to meet Anne. I haven't met Nancy recently. I met her a really long time ago at a party, but otherwise I haven't gotten to meet her. But
Well, that's still cool. I mean, that's a great story. It's a great memory. There's a lot of stuff you can relate to, even when watching her show. Now that
yeah.
you're playing in a band that does a lot of their music, which is great. And I'm sure, like, I was going to ask you, like, how many shows the band does a year at this point of the career of the band.
Um, well, it varies. I mean, it's not that much. We don't go out on the road from show to show. We do a lot of fly dates, so we'll go out, from Seattle, we'll fly out to a show and then do one or two shows and then come back.
Okay. So it's not like
So
a big
it's
tour. You're
maybe
on the road with a tour bus and stuff
no,
like that.
it's kind of piecemeal, and we do a lot of stuff in Western Washington or anything, within 5 hours of Seattle. If we can drive to it, we will. So it's a few times a month if we're
That's like
lucky.
it keeps you busy,
Yeah, it
And I'm
does.
sure those
Yeah.
shows are not like small little shows. They're big shows, for the band.
We're doing a lot of performing arts centers, so they're cozy, but it's
Yeah, they're not small shows. I know what you're talking about. I consider them
yeah.
big shows for a band to be able to do that. Does the band have any plans? When you say fly dates, I would imagine, is it mostly in the United States or do you do any international work?
So far it's just been in the United States.
Okay. Is
Yeah.
there plans to go international with the band? Is there talks of anything like that?
There were, but they never panned out. So, I don't see that on the horizon soon, but you never know. If we get an offer, we would definitely take it if it makes sense.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Because I'm sure how many members are playing with the band now. That are like full time
Five.
members. Five,
Oh, five of us, yeah, and it's only just us five.
right? And I'm sure like there's players in the band that wouldn't mind doing some international dates because not only
Oh yeah, we'd all love to.
yeah, yeah. So when the situation arises, I'm sure you guys will jump on it and go and be on a plane and go do a date.
Yeah, we do have a cruise that we're doing this. I technically would be international, I guess.
No, that's those the theme cruises right now. It's funny. I was just talking to the guy that books a lot of those. He's the main company that started the theme cruises with all the bands and stuff like that. They were just bought by NCL, by the the cruise
Oh,
company.
wow.
So they
Norwegian.
merged,
Yeah.
and we had a great conversation because I was trying to talk with him about being a guest as well because he has such a history of music career before he started doing what he does for that. But we were talking how it's just incredible how that situation from the cruises have taken off, and it's everything from theme cruises I'm talking about. So, it's going to be fun for you. When does that happen?
It's in next March. It's the 70s rock and romance cruise.
Great. And
So,
a lot of big people on the bill.
yeah, there's Kansas, Ambrosia,
Okay.
Melissa Manchester, I think is on it.
Still
Uh,
big people.
and then there's some tributes, Queen Nation, who are we know those guys. We're friends with them. Trying to remember. Oh, America, I think,
Sure.
is on there, and
And sometimes
there's
they
a
even
Red
add, they'll
tribute.
add, keep adding more people,
Yeah,
before the
they
date.
have. Yeah, we got added later, and then there's more bands I think they're going to announce. So,
You're going to have a great time because I've heard
yeah,
nothing but great stuff about. I haven't been on a theme cruise, but I've spoke to a ton of bands that have played the theme cruises, and they say it's just totally set up pro, where the sound is great, backline is great, everything that you need is great, and then just to hang with all the musicians is great, along with the fans, but just the interaction you get to do. It was funny. I forget what band it was. A big band, like A-list celebrity band, but they were saying the main singer just stayed in his cabin the whole cruise, and I was just like, wow, they're like, yeah, he doesn't like to mingle with people and stuff like that. I was like, oh, he's like, but the rest of the band was like, boop, out the door,
party.
yeah,
Yeah,
party and just mingling with the fan. They said they had more fun talking with fans because they don't get to do that too often, like a giant group. It's a cruise ship, thousands of people or whatever it is, and then getting to hang out. And some of the cruises get to do some jam stuff where you jam with other members of other bands. But I think every cruise is different. But that's going to be fun for you. I'm excited for you for that.
yeah, we did. We actually were on the Kiss cruise a couple of years ago
Were you
with
really?
Kiss. Yeah, we got to do that, hanging out with all the other bands and with the guys in Kiss a little bit. So that was fun.
The co-host that I have, Ray, on the show, who's on tour with Chicago, he's in Paul Stanley's solo band.
Oh, okay.
So he's got the Kiss stories and stuff like that.
I'll bet.
Yeah. But no, that's awesome. I have to ask, these for me, you're first of all just an amazing guest so far. So thanks again for being on the show. But I have to ask you, like, because there's so many people have different opinions of the tribute band world. What do you think your definition of a tribute band is?
Well, I want to start by saying that we Heart by Heart doesn't like to think of
I
us
get it. I know what you're
as a
going to say
tribute just
because
we
I've
got the
talked to so
two
many
original
guests.
members.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no.
but we inhabit the same universe, because we are paying tribute to the music.
It's that fine line.
Yeah, so we kind of are in a little bit of a gray area where uh, we have to consider it a tribute because we don't have the main faces in the band that people think of when they think of Heart. That's Ann and Nancy, and we'll never have that. And so we can't go out there saying that we are Heart because we're just not. But we have some good credibility, as with two of the original guys. So, but we kind of have to accept that people do see us as a tribute because, we don't have the voice, that who you think of when you think of Heart.
But even outside of Heart by Heart, which I get what you're saying, and I had
Yeah.
another guest on the show. Same thing. There are some original members and stuff like that, but he says we call it an untribute band. I was like, that's funny. But outside, of Heart by Heart, do you like when you see a tribute band? In your mind, you picture them, oh, they have to dress the part, or they have to play it just like the record, and that makes them, the better tribute band, or combination of both, or, because today's world is like, it's moving so quick in the industry for tribute bands. every time I look up, there's something different happening.
Yeah, you have to figure out which type of tribute band you want to be. Whether you're just going to play the music as best you can and make it sound really good and be a good show, or are you going to do the whole visual presentation, costumes, wigs, impersonations? Some people, and it depends on what band you're tributing. Like if you're going to do Kiss, well, you better be doing the whole makeup and
Yeah, exactly.
everything, and the flash pots and all the visuals.
Exactly. Yep.
But if you're like the Eagles, what do those guys even look like? How do you dress up like Don Henley? I mean, Crow, I guess, but
Yeah, I
so
think we had a band called Get the Lead Out, Big Zeppelin
yes,
band.
I know those guys. I've seen them,
So
and
they're
yeah,
incredible.
they're fantastic because they have the extra players and they are just recreating the music
And that's what they said. They
amazingly.
said, we're not here to wear wigs. We're not here to
Yeah.
dress up. We're here to make you close your eyes and it'll sound like Zeppelin 1, or something like that. And we want to recreate it. And down to the sounds of the amps we use, the guitars we use, and all that good stuff. It was great interview. And we grew up, actually, me and the guitar player grew up in the same hometown. So it was kind of cool just trading stories. But with that said, it was so interesting hearing his view on what a tribute band, and he might have been the guy that said we're an untribute band, we're not a tribute band, because
Okay.
it is, and
Yeah.
we're not coming out in costumes and all that. We just want to sound like the record, and when people come and see us, they want to hear it because they don't get to see Zeppelin that often,
No.
in different
Or ever.
pieces. Yeah, well, forever to full Zeppelin, you might get something, but at the end of the day, they want to sound exactly like the record. And they've done it for a long time now where they're super successful and they're able to play big places, but they do stick to what has made them great, which is basically not the costumes, just sounding like the record. So I agree with you. You have to figure out, you were starting to say, you have to figure out which path do you want to go down. Do you want to
Yeah.
do the David Lee Roth path with the big hat and the kicks and all that good stuff, which makes sense to do it because he's a character. But when you're doing bands like the Eagles or Zeppelin, or even your band, there's that line where you have to say to yourself, what are these people coming to see and hear? you know
Yeah.
so I
Yeah.
think you hit it right on the head with your feeling, because that scene is changing, from advice that you could give to some, say, either younger musicians starting out that want to be in a tribute band, or even it's all ages. Everybody's starting a tribute band now, because that's like the new thing. It's not new, but it is the growing thing, I should say. Is there any advice that you would say, hey, do this or that, or concentrate on this and that?
Okay. So I'd say once you have figured out what you're going to do,
Yep.
if you're going to wear the costumes, if you're going to act like the person or the band that you're tributing, then go all out. Do it, do it to the hilt. Be as so good at it that, you know, that you're sick of hearing the music. um, just be so good because if you're half-ass about it, then nobody wants to see that either. Like if I'm going to go see a Van Halen tribute that's doing the whole act, then that guitar player better be good. He better have the right pants. You know, he should have the hair, and the David Lee Roth has to have the hair and the outfit and the splits, and it's like go all out with it. Be as good with every aspect um, as you can, and then you'll be worth seeing. But if you got the look but not the musical abilities, then it's not very exciting.
Yeah, no, I agree. When I was talking to one of the bigger Kiss tribute bands, he was saying the audition process for him starting the band was definitely tough because, if somebody came in and say they were a little bit overweight, or whatever, it just doesn't fit the mold of the band. Now, it is what it is. We're in the entertainment business, and for that particular band, it does matter because people want to see. They want to see Gene Simmons. They want to see Paul Stanley. So he was real particular about that. But he said the one thing he didn't do was just sacrifice the look for the musicianship because he still needed that. You might think of Kiss, oh, it's all makeup and stuff, but no, if you listen to their songs, there's definitely a sound to them. So he was real particular about that, which, it's what you said. You have to figure out the lane that you want to go down and then perfect it and then work at it. It's not overnight. Everybody I talk to is years, the successful bands, years. The Pink Floyd that we just had on, they were like, I think he said, and I don't even know if I'm saying the right number, but around 28 years, That's a long time,
Yeah.
to be doing that. It could be 18 or 28, but still, even 18 is a long time to find the success of where they're at. And it was just perfecting the show, whether it's from a stage prop, lighting, tech cues, whatever it might be. They kept growing it and making it bigger because they wanted to be super big. But I think that's like, a super important fact that you kids watching this, you better pay attention and do your homework, But no, it's super important. What about for your favorite song to play from Heart? Do you have any favorites?
Oh, yeah, like I mentioned, Mistral Winds.
Yep, that's one of your favorites. Okay.
Yeah, that's the last track on Dog and Butterfly, and it's kind of epic. And so for me as a prog rock fan, that really spoke to me, when I heard it. It's long and it's atmospheric at the beginning, and then it rocks out in the middle, and then it goes back to this like ethereal kind of ending, and that's totally my thing. Um, and so I love doing that, and I know that a lot of the people that watch us love hearing us do that song too. So that's really gratifying to present that. Um,
And
and I enjoy it, and they think they see that enjoyment. And
And do you get like feedback from the fans that you get to talk to? Hey,
yeah.
love that song, but do you think you guys can throw this in your set list? Do you get requests that like maybe it's a track that they just love and you never thought of playing? Has that ever entered into the set list?
Oh yeah, there have been a few. I mean, for years, yeah, people would be like, "How come you guys never play Sing Child?" Or, "We like to hear All I Want to Do Is Make Love to You." And we're like,
Sure.
"Okay," but we have done those. In
So you
fact, I
do
want to
listen to
mention.
your fans.
Oh yeah, yeah, we do. But sometimes it's like we're never going to do that song. Sorry, but thanks. So if it's really like obscure, because to please one person, we'd rather do something that everyone's going to enjoy.
Oh
We
yeah,
we've done
it's
some
you drive
we've done a
yourself
few
crazy.
obscure ones, and yeah, it's like we enjoy doing it because it's like, hey, here's one for the Heart fans, But then two people clap, and we're like, okay, maybe that didn't go over so well.
No,
So
that's
we'll
a
try
running
it.
thing with the bands. You have to limit to the request or comments online and stuff like that. How come you didn't do this? I'd like to see add this because it's about the set list and the show and the flow and all that good stuff to keep people keep coming back because there is a certain flow to it, that a show has. And if you put all like obscure songs or B-sides, you would not, I don't think you're going to get it too far.
No, no.
And that's why there's hits. That's why there's songs that you must play. Is there any, do you stray from studio arrangements to like live stuff that you do? Is there any like different arrangements you might do?
Yeah, we have a few things where we kind of not mash up, but we do a little bit of a medley where we'll do part of the song and then go right into another song.
Right.
So it's kind of like half of this song, half of that song. And then you're getting two songs for the price of one, kind of,
Right.
without
It's
us
a
having to
deal.
play the whole 5 minute song. But yeah, we have a few kind of medleys like that. And there's, a couple things we've done where we've done added some guitar solo, extended guitar solo kind of sections where, like, going back to the way Hart did it back in the day, when they would tour, they'd have a couple of extended sections with extra instrumental stuff. sometimes we'll do that.
That's great that you guys get to do that and just rearrange some of the stuff versus just doing
Yeah.
the exact album tracks. You'll
Yeah.
get to stretch a little bit. Is there?
That comes from me sometimes as a
Does it
fan.
really?
Because I'm like, hey,
I
I was
love
listening to
that.
this old bootleg, and you guys used to do this thing, and like, wouldn't that be cool if we did that? So sometimes I'll try to work in something just because I'm coming at this as a fan of the band too, and which is a little different perspective than Mike and Steve because they're just like they don't think about it that way
No, I mean,
necessarily.
I think they're
So
so ingrained of living the life of what they've done with the band. I think having somebody like you in there that comes from the fan perspective, as well as your background in music, that, if you hear a live version, you're like, well, that resonates with me. It's a little bit different, a little more challenging. And believe me, I'm sure the band did it live because of that,
right,
that you're bringing to the table. It opens their eyes to a different arrangement or something different that they might not have thought of, which, they're lucky to have somebody like you in a band that does bring that kind of stuff. I think, listen, what do I know? I'm not in a band, but I do think that, and I think that's part of being a band member that contributes versus just being a side person. So no, that's great. Is there any one song out of your whole set list or the repertoire that you played that just is the big song? That you feel that take away from the audience that it's always this song. There's just never a doubt it's this song.
crazy on you.
Versus Barracuda. See, I would have thought it was
Well,
Barracuda.
uh, I was trying to decide which one I was going to say, but
Right.
those
But
two,
they're both
definitely
those
those
huge
two.
songs. I mean,
Yeah,
but
maybe that one and Barracuda. Both. I mean, people just kind of go nuts when we do those.
yeah, I mean, and
We
they're
save them
both
for
just
the end.
giant, songs.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Is there any kind of like, do you guys have meetings where there's some future plans for the band that's coming up that, that you guys are working on behind the scenes?
Yeah. In fact, right now we're getting ready to do the whole Dreamboat Annie album.
I was going to ask you that. So I was going to ask if you played like album from top down.
Yeah, I've suggested it for years that, hey, wouldn't it be cool if we did all of Dog and Butterfly or all of Dreamboat Annie? And,
Yeah.
everybody was kind of like, well, nobody was that excited about it. But this year and next year are kind of like the 50th anniversary of the release of Dreamboat Annie. And it just seems wrong to not do some kind of recognition of that. So we have a couple of shows already that we're going to be doing it at in January. That we're It's being advertised as that's what we're going to do. So now we have to do it. But yeah, we're excited about we've started playing through the songs, and it's a challenge because there's only five of us, and they had six people in the band back then, where they had somebody to do all the keyboards, and then they had three guitar players. Um, and now I have to do a lot of that stuff that myself, because I do the keyboards and guitar, whereas they used to have like three people handling all those parts. So
Yeah, I was going to say there's probably because the band is just a live band, there's probably no discussion of, hey, let's use some tracks to help us out here.
yeah, that idea came up, but that's not going to happen.
Yeah, I would
I
imagine
mean,
not.
I'm open to it, but it's not something that, playing to a click track is just not logistically feasible with the guys. I've done that with other bands. It's not something I would have a problem doing, but
It's not for
we're just
everybody,
not.
honestly.
Yeah,
It really
it's
is
just not going to work.
yeah, it's definitely band by band by band. I find, what works, what doesn't work with track. And because you're doing music back in the day that a lot of bands didn't use tracks, it was all feel and stuff like that. So it takes away, a little bit from, the feel, for lack of other
Letting it
words.
flow. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So, no, that's exciting. I'm excited for you to do that. And the band, I would imagine, has a management that does a lot of the marketing. Do you ever get involved with some of the marketing, or do you have people that come to your own socials and comment? Do you engage your fans that way?
Yeah, we do everything ourselves. We're
Okay.
self-managed.
Oh, great.
Our singer, Summer, does most of the social media posting. And yeah, we interact online. I do a lot of the graphic stuff, like our artwork and,
Okay.
when we put out visual stuff, graphics and posters to promote the shows, I make a lot of that stuff. I do all the promo video editing. I also do the video. We have video backgrounds for during the show, and I put all that together and I run it on stage
That's
most
not
of
an
the time
easy
too.
task, to
No,
get all that stuff edited. It's funny
yeah,
because I was going to ask what your stage show looks like. Whether you have, obviously lights, of course, but is there some things like additional that you do, and you just answer that, like the video screens and stuff like that. But the back end of it, editing all that stuff together and coming up with the concept for that stuff, that's not easy. So
no.
props to you for doing that and
I
playing a
put a
million
lot of
other
time into it.
instruments,
Yeah, yeah.
So, no,
Like I
and
said, I'm a little bit of a techno geek, so
no, I love that. I love that. Well, Lizzy, you're not going to believe this, but we are like out of time. It flew. I mean,
wow.
I say this, and this is going to be, I'm going to put it on a t-shirt, but we need a part two where we can catch up with you. If you do a part two, and hear what's new and exciting, because I mean, you guys are busy. The band's always doing something new. I want to hear how the cruise went, all the,
Oh yeah,
I'm sure there's
we
going to be
can't
some
wait.
story. I want the stories from the cruise. That's what I want. I'm
Okay.
sure you're going to have some,
I
but,
don't know what happens on the cruise stays on the cruise. That's what I heard.
well, then I'm going to have to get on that cruise and interview
Oh,
you
you
on the
should.
cruise.
Okay.
This
Okay.
is great. I have to plus come out and see you guys. I'm going to have to see when I'm either in your town or when you're playing around. I just can't get enough of seeing live shows. I'm a musician. I have this joke that we run. It runs within my friends, because I have a decent amount of friends that do tours or play in tribute bands. It's like, whenever you're going to be in my town, I'll be traveling, so we'll never get to see each other.
Right.
It's
I
just
know. I
it's
hate
always
that.
that way. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, I'm in your hometown. Where are you? You're like, yeah, I'm in Las Vegas. I'm not here.
Yeah. Same.
So, but we'll definitely have to do a part two. This has been great. Where can everybody find you? Let's let everybody know where everybody can find you.
Well, they can find Heart by Heart at heartbyheart.com.
Easy enough.
That's our website.
And how
Yeah,
about
and
you
then you can.
personally?
Me personally, I have my own website, LizzyDaymont.com,
Okay.
which is, just kind of me. I don't do a lot like solo or anything at this point. I do occasionally do some other gigs with other bands if they call me and I'm available. But mostly Heart by Heart is my main focus.
Well, everybody go visit those sites. We're going to put it in the
Yeah.
description below. Click on it. And Lizzy, I can't thank you enough. You've been an amazing guest, and we're going to do part
Thank you.
two. Thanks for listening to Tribute Band Sessions podcast. Please don't forget to subscribe, like, and drop a comment. Want more info? Sign up to our mailing list at tributebandsessions.com. It's the best way to stay in the loop on upcoming episodes, special guests, and behind-the-scenes stories, and all things tribute bands. And don't forget to follow us on all our socials at Tribute Band Sessions. Thanks for watching.